Here we go. These are my 50 tips for having a great vocal session. First one is be early. Not just on time, be actually early. Be there maybe a good hour ahead of time so you can get familiar with the setup, get acclimated, get yourself situated. If you're working at a commercial studio, you would get there and be able to sort of get comfortable with the situation, see that everyone's ready and waiting for your client or for your artist. Just be there early and expect that other people would be there early, getting ready for the performance, getting ready for the vocalist. That means you have a 2 o'clock session. You don't get there at 2 o'clock and just start setting up with the artist, blah, blah, blah. Get there early and you eat before you get there. Get everything you needed to get done ahead of time before you get there so that you're not thinking about other situations in your life, other commitments, other phone calls you need to make. All that stuff needs to be off the table when you're about to go into a vocal session for the next several hours. Number 2, these will be in order, but sort of not in order. I don't know. Number 2 is learn the song. If you weren't part of making the song and it's an unfamiliar piece of music to you, it's on you to really quickly get yourself familiar with what you're working on. And that means understanding what the song is, whether it's a ballad or a rock tune or a pop tune or an R&B tune. Get familiar with it. Start learning the format immediately. Where the verses are, where the choruses are there pre-choruses? Is there a bridge? Is there a tag on the chorus? Are there double choruses? All these things are what you need to look for so that you can be in sync with the vocalist and or the producer when things start happening, when you start recording. And as you learn their workflow or you figure out a workflow together, knowing the song is a huge thing. I mean, you might only have a few times to listen to it down to get a feel for it. Another thing you might want to do is have the vocalist or the producer, whoever knows the song, sit there with you and let it play down while you make cues or memory locations in whatever software you're using, or if you're writing them, just writing them down on paper so you know that when someone says, let's go to the second verse, you have a good feel for where that is. You understand what the song is all about. You're only working on one song at a time, so you should just make that song the absolute focus of your life for the next couple of hours, few hours, whatever it takes. With that, I think you want to learn the key of the song. And if you don't understand the key, if you're not a musician, then you need to sort of kind of get up to speed with that and be familiar with what the key is, because it'll help you if they ask for anything like auto-tuning or pitch correction. If someone wanted to test out to see if a vocal part was going to work and you were going to drop it down into a channel to see if there was something to work with, it would help that you knew the key. And you can have, if you're not a big time, if you're not a real versed musician, I would suggest you ask someone on the session, hey, what key is this thing in? Is it a minor key? Is it a major key? Is it D? Is it C? Whatever. Just ask them what key it's in. Also, find out, this is another tip, find out what the tempo is. And if you don't know what the tempo is, and no one knows, then you might need to make a real quick tempo map of the song so that when you are moving stuff around on a grid, that the grid is accurate. So if someone asks you to fly a vocal from one section to another, if you have things mapped out to tempo, then they'll be able to do that. But if you don't, you're going to be all over the place and throwing vocals in wrong places and not understanding why things are off. Sometimes it's just in the Pro Tools session or in the Logic session, whatever you're working in, and that headache is out of the way, but these are things to keep in mind. Next thing is having a plan on what microphone you're going to use, what mic pre you're going to use, and what compressor you're going to use. Depending on the situation, if you have a few choices on microphones, you might want to grab a condenser and a dynamic microphone, have some variety on hand, but commit to something early, saying to yourself, okay, I'm recording vocals. Let's try my best condenser microphone first, and my mic pre that I'm used to going with, and my compressor that I'm used to going with, and the ones that I understand thoroughly how they work and what typical settings will at least get me in the ballpark to get a vocalist up and running as I can then, after that, fine-tune things. At some point, very soon, you would set up a reverb. I like to use a plate on Send 1 or auxiliary A or auxiliary bus 1, whatever. A plate, then maybe a hall on number 2, and then a quarter note on bus 4, an eighth note on bus 8, and a 16th note on bus 16, so that when someone asks, or I'm looking for a quarter note delay or an eighth note delay, I know right away I could just go to bus 4 and get a quarter note, bus 8 and get a 16th note, etc. These are things that, of course, they're tempo dependent, so that's another reason why you would want to understand what, or have a good feel for what the tempo of the song is, so that you can have these things be in sync with everything else. Okay, now number 7. I don't know if I'm going to keep remembering to put the numbers in, but this is number 7. This is about the microphone setup. What I mean by that is choosing the microphone stand and adjusting that, tightening it all up, making sure every little part of it is functioning and tight. I'm looking at a microphone stand right here, so I'm going to try and bring that into the, it's a prop, my first prop, I think. You have a microphone stand, make sure that it's functioning perfectly, tighten the thing up, get it adjusted in the ballpark of where you're going to want to use it. If it's janky, then you're going to have to tape it up and put some tape on it and get things tightened up and make sure that they're cool. The next thing you want to do is have the microphone on it with the pop filter. And that pop filter should be adjusted and tightened and properly aligned with the microphone so that when the singer gets in front of the mic, it is a given that the thing is dead straight, centered with the microphone, and you're ready to go. Next thing is make sure that that cable is running out of the microphone, straight down the microphone stand, maybe clipped to the mic stand, or spun around it a little bit, but not too tight because you might have to make some adjustments and you don't want the mic line really like kind of snarled up. But what I'm saying is that make sure that the microphone, make sure that it's a beautifully set up, neat, clean, intentionally set up microphone setup. So that, I mean, those are some crazy ways of describing it. So in other words, it should look like a professional set up that microphone. And that it's not slipping around, it's not falling over, the wire isn't like hanging all over the place, and the mic cable isn't like dangling in front of the singer and distracting them. You're trying to eliminate every possible thing that could come into their minds that would interfere with a great performance. So to that end, make sure that the microphone stand is set up so that it's balanced, and yet the vocalist has clear foot room. So if they're going to, like, I don't know if that's the right word, but, you know, if they're going to move around and, you know, stomp their feet or dance or jiggle or whatever and be free, they don't have to worry about like kicking the mic stand or tapping into it, bumping into anything, stepping on a wire, all those type of things that would throw them off. And they will throw them off. Number 8 would be having a music stand. And this would be for paper and a pen or a pencil, preferably a pencil, so that the lyrics can be written out and the vocalist can have those handy. Now, this is going to be like a thing that's sort of like anti-millennial, you know, very controversial with millennials. I think that the idea of using your phone, another prop, for your lyrics while you're singing is one of the worst ideas of all time. You're talking about having something in your hand that is often a source of tension and anxiety and problems. You may have received an email from your girlfriend or boyfriend on this thing an hour before the session that just set you off. You know that all their pictures are in here that drive you crazy. You know that social media is in this thing and it drives you crazy. Yet you're going to hold this thing up or have it held up in front of you, and you're going to continue to be attached to this electronic device that has all kinds of other things going on inside of it besides your song. My suggestion is, ideally, is that you have the song memorized. The best vocalists I've ever recorded had their lyrics memorized. At the most, they would have a piece of paper that was handwritten or printed out. That would be on a music stand as a point of reference, maybe to every once in a while look at and say like, oh yeah, I'm happy with that line. I got that line. So they would like make a little check mark next to it, or fix a lyric, or like they'd be able to look at a lyric and say like, oh yeah, I'm going to change that word. So they would write it in that they're changing that word. This would put something mental in their head that they've made this fix. Then they would look at it, visualize it, and then sing into the microphone and be connected to the microphone and connected to the song, which is the whole idea. My vote is, if you can, and you know, it's a very delicate situation. If someone's attached to their phone, like, you know, just a pathetic lost soul that can't do anything without their phone, then you're going to have to let them. There are moments where you'll be able to talk to an artist and discuss with them something pertaining to this. Number 10 is label the channel or track that you're recording with the appropriate name of what it is. So if it's a lead vocal, please put that in there. Lead vocal 1, lead vocal 2, lead vocal 3. Don't have everything winding up as audio 1, audio 2, audio 3, because down the line you're going to be either trying to figure out what the vocals are and renaming everything. Be a little proactive and have 4 or 5 lead vocal channels ready. Lead vocal 1, 2, 3, 4. In the event that something was an overlap, like a chorus, a double chorus has an overlap, and they need to sing on one track and then continue on another because there's a you know, the weave, then you could just literally arm the new track instead of saying, oh, hold up a second, I got to make a new track, or oh God, I don't have any new tracks, but I'll just use one of these audio 002s, audio 003s, and create a mess. Have some planning involved. This is why you get there early. Set up your template, bring in, you know, kind of like set your session up with your vocal tracks, with your overdub tracks, with your double tracks, and all your buses like I was referring to, and you'll save a lot of time, headache, and you'll keep the ball rolling, you'll keep the flow going. It's a big sip of coffee. Number 11 is be flexible. Not every session is going to go exactly the same. In fact, as a matter of fact, every one of them is going to be different. So you need to be prepared to make adjustments on the fly. Every singer is going to be comfortable with something different than the previous one and the next one. So some will want more reverb, some will want less reverb, some will want their vocals kind of loud in the track, some will want them buried in the track because they like to be in the track. Some are going to want the lights out, some are going to want them all the way up, some are going to want candles, incense, all these things. There's so many variables to deal with that you just have to have the perspective that you need to be flexible. Now, I've always found that if there were things that the artist asked for that I knew that might get them in trouble with the recording process, I felt comfortable in building a little bit of a rapport with them and explaining to them like, okay, you know, we can do that, but I just want you to know if we do that, such and such might come back to haunt us as far as the way we're recording this vocal or the way we're going about laying these tracks. For instance, if they said something along the lines of they want to record every other line on a different track or not do that, these are like little complicated session things that you have to kind of figure out as they're going along. You have to be flexible. You have to be flexible if they want to sit down when they're singing, if they want to stand up while they're singing, if they want a stool, and then you got to find a stool that doesn't make any noise. So you have to be prepared for anything to be thrown at you, including the chair. Number 12. This probably comes up often in all my discussions. It's the flow, the pace of the session, and your speed in relation to their speed. So if you're recording a vocalist who really wants to take their time and has a feel for getting in the mood, then you're going to have to adjust to that and go with it and allow them to take their time, allow them to warm up. Maybe this is someone that likes to sing it a few times all the way down, then take a breather, take a look at their lyrics, start doing another track. Maybe it's someone that's in a rush or that has like a super hyper way of doing things. So there are other singers who like to sing the chorus first, get a feel for things, then go back and do the verses and see if they're building enough into the choruses. There's a variety of things that you're going to have to be prepared to deal with, or that you should be dealing with, but there's a flow to that, and then there's the idea of how different people want to work. You can speed up enough to work with faster with the person who wants to work fast, but you got to be willing to slow down enough for the person that wants to take it easy and digest things little by little. Number 13 is ask questions. Now, I'm not talking about like in the middle of a vocal, but you can ask questions before you're getting started. Like, hey, do you like to have tea in the booth while you're working? Do you like your headphones really loud? Do you like them bright? Do you like a lot of reverb? There's several questions that you could kind of get a feel for things by asking without turning it into a nightmare interview for the artist. So you have to have a feel for it. But, asking questions is always a good thing. And I've never seen anyone respond to a legitimate question in a kind of crazy way. It shows that you're concerned, and hopefully you are concerned, and that you're in tune to what's going on. You're interested. You're looking for ways to help the situation. There's a lot of pressure on a vocalist, and it's a very lonely feeling being on the microphone singing with headphones on. You're isolated from the world, and the more things that they can feel good about, the better. Okay, so number 14. This is on the talkback microphone, and this is if you're in a studio where the singer's in a booth and you're recording in the control room and you have a talkback microphone. On the talkback microphone, be courteous with that thing. Be not abrupt with it. Be clear with how you're speaking to the person. This is someone that feels detached. They almost feel as though they're in a bubble. They don't know what's being said in the room while they're singing. They're thinking about these things. They're wondering what people are doing. And for the love of God, I hope that no one is walking around and doing crazy shit in the control room while the vocalist is singing that can see them, because that immediately would take their minds off of what they're doing and what's going on. It's, to me, vital that everyone is courteous to the fact that the vocalist is in there, and even the musicians that are in there, and they know that everyone is catering to them. There's nothing else going on but catering to them. And that doesn't mean 5 people in the front of the window staring at them, because that's creepy also. But there shouldn't be anything going on in the control room other than people sitting, listening. And when that talkback is pressed, there should only be one person talking to the artist, and not 4 people talking about what they just did on Instagram in the background, and a television on, a phone ringing, and things like that, while the producer and or the engineer is trying to communicate with the vocalist. Number 16 is, this is something that I always use to my advantage, was for important moments for the vocalist. Say the vocalist is having a weird time, like they're not really catching on to the song. Maybe they're having a little bit of a moment themselves. I typically would use that moment or that situation to ask them if I could come in there for a minute, like into the booth, because I just want to check the microphone, adjust things, and just take a look at the setup. 99 times out of 100, they're like, yeah, sure. So I'll go in, and at that point, they have their headphones off. You're not on a talkback, and you can sort of like get them grounded again by just sort of like throwing around a little bit of small talk, like, oh, is this pop filter cool, or is everything okay with that? Microphone's good. You're feeling okay? Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, let's get back. And that usually kind of that was my imitation of a dialogue there. Usually that kind of resets the table a little bit for the singer, and then they get a breath, they get the headphones off for a second, they didn't leave the room, and they also feel as though that someone's looking out for them. So at least it's my interpretation. So getting back to that with going backwards a little bit on the microphone setup, it's also important to make sure that the pop filter is clean and doesn't have any smells or stinks or stains or marks on it or anything else disgusting. Clean that thing. Maybe have a couple extra. Maybe you should own a few that you bring with you to sessions that you know aren't disgusting, because you don't know what you're in for when you go to a commercial spot. Or if you have a studio of your own, then you should have some stuff to clean the pop filter with, and or the front of the microphone, whether that's rubbing alcohol or something like that. And then even resort to the spraying it with some sort of like deodorizer or something like that. I don't know. Number 17, test the headphones prior to the artist putting the headphones on their own head. I would insist every time I've done vocals, besides making sure that there was a beautiful cue mix for them, which is another point, I would check the headphones for them, make sure that they weren't, one, blown up, didn't have a bad wire, weren't too loud, weren't too soft. You don't want to put the headphones on an artist and, God forbid, they're all the way up and somebody made a mistake on something and you hit play and tear their heads off. That should be your head being torn off first. You should be checking those headphones and actually making a point of it that they know that you've checked the headphones. So whether it's when they're in the booth and you say, like, excuse me, let me just check your headphones first. Take a listen. Okay, you're safe. Here you go. Let me know how loud you want them, how soft you want them. As we're doing takes, just give me a heads up if you need more volume or less volume. Okay, so number 21 now this is like kind of like working with the vocalist now. You're going to want to suggest to them that they sing along with the track prior to doing a punch in. So, sing along and I'll get you in and out where we talked about punching in and out. This is important. You don't want someone not singing before the punch and then just blasting in, because you're not going to get a natural sounding punch in and or punch out. And don't have them sing only the punch in, have them sing leading up to it and then going past it, because that will give you a natural take that you can edit from and put things together for them. Okay, 22 is a tricky one. If you're doing vocals with a vocalist in a booth, there are times when maybe they need a breather, they need a little perspective, so you can suggest to them, hey, come on in the control room, take a listen on the speakers, get a feel for things, see how it's hitting you, see how you sound in the track on speakers as opposed to in the headphones. And that can be a little bit of a positive thing where they can get some perspective. If they are in the control room with you and they have headphones on and you have headphones on to avoid the feedback scenario, I always felt as though the vocalist and myself should always be the same. Like if they're listening in headphones, I'm listening in headphones. If we're going to take a point where we're going to listen on speakers, then we're both going to take our headphones off and listen on speakers. And that to me is the equivalent of them coming out of the booth into the control room to listen. Okay, number 23 is that you should be obvious, and it should be obvious to them that they're the most important thing happening there that day, those few hours, whatever it takes to get the vocal. They should really feel as though everything is catering to them. They are the bride at the wedding for those few hours. They are the focus of everything. Everybody is gearing towards helping them get across the finish line. And it should be clear to them, and it should be obvious to them that that's the most important thing that is happening. Number 25 is be polite, be considerate, be generous with your overall attention that you're giving things. Don't be distracted by your phone. It shouldn't even be on, as far as I'm concerned. It shouldn't even be visible. The idea that something else would be on your mind while you're recording someone is absolutely like an insult to them. You should be 100% focused and 100% tuned in to reading the room and reading the situation at all times, and being completely aware of what's being recorded, what needs to be recorded, what things you've done multiple takes of, what things you haven't done multiple takes of, whether they're happy with choruses and doubles yet. Looking out for them, looking out for things that they might be forgetting, hey, you doubled this is like for instance, like, hey, you doubled the last line of the first verse, but we don't have a double of the last line of the second verse. Is that something you would want? Those type of things are magic to a session because they actually help everything move along. You don't want to get done with a vocal, and because you weren't locked in, several things get forgotten, and they're like, oh my God, you gotta get back in there. We gotta get all these different parts, because they're worried about singing. They're, maybe to a certain extent, they're not exactly locked in on all the little nitty gritty that they get. But your gig as a producer and or engineer is to be making sure that you're getting all these things and helping the singer get all these things.